It's another episode of Feed the Trolls, and we have HenryG with us. I never thought this time would come because Henry and I work together on lots of events, but we never see each other because we're always on a different shift. He leaves as I arrive. Okay. And the few times he has seen me outside of work has been in the gym, and he pretends like he doesn't know me. So, Henry, welcome to the show.
Okay. Just going to defend myself here slightly. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Secondly, yes, that is true. When I'm in the gym and I'm on a gaming event, I get like social anxiety. So I'm just going to put that out there. So I try, especially like if anyone else is in the gym, I try not to make eye contact, just focus on my own thing. And when you're in your gym clothes, I just thought you were one of the women in the gym. I didn't recognize you. It wasn't like I was ignoring you. Just didn't know who you were. And that happened twice in one event. So it was a bit awkward. But again, happy to be here.
I like the way she made it sound like she has to do this podcast just to talk to you. Like, oh, actually acknowledge I exist now. Oh, hello. It's like, oh, how you doing?
To be fair, I don't do any podcasts. I made it very clear. I don't do any interviews. I don't do any podcasts. But I felt bad saying no to Duncan like maybe 3 times in a row.
There you go.
So I thought, you know what? This is the time. This is the one. Just got off my shift at Pro League literally 15 minutes ago. I've been home for 10 minutes and I'm here. I'm keen and I'm ready.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much, Henry. I've been sitting on that gym joke for a while. I've been wanting to throw it around a little bit.
It's fair cop. Honestly, I put my hands up. You can throw away the key.
And also, that is the secret law of events that people don't know. You know, when they announced that talent announcement, it's like, oh, they're all working the event. It's great to work with you. No, there's like gradations. You have to understand. It's like the roadie doesn't really get to go up to like Jimmy Page and go, hey, Jimmy, what guitar you play? Shut up. Get this guy out there. There's a guy to go, listen, Jimmy's busy at the moment. Like listen, you're moving up the ranks. It's all good. Yeah.
I gotta work my way up to getting greeted in the gym.
Like, put it this way, I don't want to seem like a diva, but there was a certain year, I won't say what year, where I used to, back in the day, would do the ESL events in 1.6, and at the end, you would actually all pitch in for real. You would all you probably remember this, Henry, you'd all take the scaffolding apart and stuff like that. There was a certain year where it got to, where I just told him, like, yeah, I'm not doing that. It's like, look, you only paid me to cast the game, yeah. Listen, my back, you can do that. I'll sit over there and watch you.
No, we've come a long way since then.
Yeah, exactly. Someone else does that now.
There we go. We're creating jobs for new people. Henry, you just said you came from Pro League, and I actually want to talk about Pro League because that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Sure.
When I say Pro League specifically, a team there which I think in the last 24 hours they've had
perfect timing for the episode, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, breaks. I think it was Donk breaks the CS2 kill record against Wildcard, and literally a few hours later, MIBR drops them into the loser bracket. By the time you watch this, they might not even be in Pro League. And we want to talk about spirits. But I think this is a really good example of where I want to start, which is the fact that, holy hell, this team is so damn inconsistent, Thorin.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the reason why is obvious. Yeah, the reason why to me is obvious, though. It's actually the reason why they're also really good, which is they do rely a lot on Shiro and Donk. And by the way, the latter more than the former. Like, I actually think it works most of the time. Like, Shiro's a very consistent player. He obviously has a pretty, more limited style, but I think it works really well in this team. The problem with the Donk factor is, this might sound selfish, but I actually love that they don't have another third star, like a Vitality, where they have, Spinks or Flames or something, and they have so many stars. Like, you can actually win a game if Zero doesn't go off every time. In this team, Donk pretty much has to carry. But the good news, if you're a fan of mega carries, is he has to. So actually it puts the pressure on this guy who was even a rookie. And quite frankly, he actually can do it most of the time. So I actually find that a compelling factor there. It's actually sort of on the back of these two guys to do a lot of the heavy lifting.
I don't know about that. I'll be honest with you. Did you watch that wildcard game when Donk literally breaks the world record, the Guinness World Record for total frags against Wildcard, no less, a team you wouldn't expect to do any damage at this tournament, and the scoreline still reads 13 to 11, and they went overtime in the second match. So he sets a world record, and it's still not enough. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like, when Donk's on, the team looks great, but he is also having issues of consistency as well. Like Cologne was his first ever negative event, right? And that was they looked weak, they looked limp, they didn't pick up a single map. They went 0-2, 0-2 against Mongols and G2, teams they should be dominating considering the context of G2 coming in. And I don't know, it looks like they were super weak. Then they go into Bet Boom. Everything's great again. Against limited opposition, the best team there being Mouse. They make light work to them. Grand final, no problem. Against a very weak-looking Eternal Fire as well. And then going into this tournament, we think, oh, it's great, the world record is set, but people are just forgetting the context. It's against fucking wildcard.
Sure.
And then you're still struggling to get over the line. And now you lose to MIBR today as well, a team they have never dropped a map to since the beginning of CSGO into CS2. They've played them like 15 times and never dropped a map to them. Now they lose 2-1 in the qualification game. So sure, when Donk turns up, this team can get it over the line. I just feel like they might be slightly fraudulent in terms of how we rate them, like, as one of the world's best teams. I think they can be on their day, but generally speaking, I don't think they have what it takes to be like a proper legacy team that's going to dominate for a whole year.
By the way, I think that is the thing that's both fair and unfair. Like, it's a bit like if you think about when Simple and Zebu used to be like the mega carry and sometimes had to like 1v9 the game. The problem is when they're as good as they are, you are like a top 3 team in the world when you do that. Like, they would actually get the placings. But I know what you mean. It's like, I used to say the same thing about Zebu and Simple. It's like, you shouldn't really have to be like twice as good as the other star player to barely win the game, though. Like, in a way, isn't like that player the reason why you're the best? Like, essentially, the real problem here is if you replace Donk with anyone else, I mean, even Nico, even Exertion, this team probably would then be like the 7th best team, right? They wouldn't win tournaments. So, in a way, it is the Donk show, but I'm just sort of saying I'm in for the Donk show. And if he has to suffer and be Sisyphus, well, you know what? My boy Simple was pushing that rock up for about 7, rushing that rock called Edward. Just pushing him up that mountain over and over again, mate.
Has a player had such profound impact before that it become a verb?
Probably not.
Be donked.
No.
To get donked. Has it ever happened? I don't think so. So I feel like, yeah, it's a really exciting prospect for this team. And when he turns up, there's no one else like him.
Yes.
But the fact that they're still not getting these big games over the line and losing to teams like MIBR, I don't know. Is it enough? Is this team actually going to be number 1 in the future again? I don't know.
We'll talk a lot about Donk, I'm sure, later on in the episode. I want to kind of focus still in on their up and downs that we've seen from Spirit. And I mean, Thorin, we spoke about this on a previous episode, talking about that IEM Cologne. It was a clusterfuck. I don't even know how else to explain it. But I mean, HenryG, I've asked this question to Thorin. I've asked it to Richard Lewis. I'll ask it to you now. I mean, what do you think happened at Cologne for this team?
I feel like they went into their games with an understanding they were going to have a cakewalk and everything was going to be fine. There was going to be no problem against the Mongols. Every single time you think they're going to win. And that team is also very inconsistent. And on their day, they can have world-class players within their ranks on their day. If you find them and all 5 players are kicking off, very difficult to put them to bed. I felt like they underestimated them. In terms of the G2 results, sure, G2 still a world-class team, even with Snacks joining their roster recently. But still, you would expect Spirit just to put them to bed easily. And I feel like they maybe just underestimated their opponents, phoned it in somewhat, maybe didn't do enough in the player break. I don't know, in terms of reinventing themselves. So I feel like that's a big problem for top teams. They play so many events and they go from LAN to LAN to LAN. When the player break hits, instead of grinding and reinventing themselves and coming back to the new strat book, it feels like a lot of teams will just go, well, we deserve the break, and which they do, but I don't think that's the formula to success. We're seeing the same sort of outcome here with FaZe right now, a team that was famously burnt out up until the player break, and they don't want to sit there and grind and reinvent the whole strat book. I feel like it's maybe a similar story to Team Spirit. They've been found out, and unless your top players are popping off, the first time Donk has a negative event, the proof is in the pudding. They just don't put up competitive results when he's not there. So yeah, maybe not saying they didn't work hard enough, but it seems like they didn't have the same sort of hunger they had after finding so much success in the first half of the year.
I know that there were lots of interviews rolling around, obviously all translated from Russian, Thorin, where I think the coach said it was his fault that he had put these new things in place that they couldn't play. And Chopper said there was like things in the team. And I mean, we alluded to this as well, like personal issues that he didn't handle. And there was like a lot of conversation, but
I mean, that's the coach's job, though, to take the heat, isn't it, though?
Yeah.
I don't expect him to say that. Like, that's what I did as a GM as well. Like, even though I know someone else fucked up so bad and they're the reason, you just say, well, it's not important for me to perform. I don't care what people think about me. I'm not sure how much truth can be taken from that. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I mean, I agree with you. So I'm just curious, though, because of what we saw in Cologne, when Spirit drops off, I mean, as we're moving towards the major, do you think that is going to be the big stumbling block for them as a team, is the fact that they have these moments where they absolutely fall apart? And like Henry said, Thorin, that even when Donk is firing on all cylinders, they struggle to get it across the line.
Dude, they've even won an event where he was like the second place and he was the MVP or whatever. Like, no, even him winning doesn't actually guarantee you the win. I think two of the problems they have as a team, and this is where their success at Katowice has warped everyone's perception of them as a squad. Think if they hadn't have won Katowice, right? Imagine instead they just made like, I don't know, quarters and lost to whoever they played in the quarters. It might have been Ents or something. I can't remember. I think actually, no, they obviously just made semis, didn't they? And then they played like Falcons or something, right? Imagine they'd lost to Falcons in the semis. Well, because they wouldn't have just won with the breakout for Donk, no one would have said like they're supposed to win every event. Then they go to the major. Imagine the same result happens. They go to the quarterfinals, lose to FaZe. It's okay to lose to FaZe. They're mega veterans. You're on stage for the first time. I feel like if the same results happened, except Katowice, people would be viewing this as like it's a team on the rise. Or it'd be like Mouse. They're entering the elite. Oh yeah, maybe they're not ready to win everything yet, but it's okay. Like pretty soon, no one looks at Mouse when they fail and goes, "Cut the team. Like, is this good enough? Like, what the hell? Like, make big changes." But because they won Katowice in the way they did, and Donk's numbers are impossible, everyone's basically like skipped to the end and we're like, right, it's time to win everything. Literally, it's time for an era, win Cologne, majors, just have the best year ever. And the part I think people do forget is this, because it's one thing that with Donk, people criticize him. I always go, bro, you know, he's probably having the best first year of any player ever. And he's a 17-year-old rookie. The one they always forget about is Zontix. Bro, Zontix is a rookie too. I can even tell you, I'll always mention this. I'm not going to make it a political thing, but Zontix himself has actually faced intense criticism in his native Ukrainian scene because he is a one Ukrainian player playing with 4 Russian players. You've already seen what people like Simple have said. They'll never do it. They've gone out of their way to make that political statement. And by the way, even if you're not political, I can tell you Bit from Narvi got in trouble just for being friends with Modesty. People were like, oh, you even friends with him? Call him out or something. So I don't think Zontix, by the way, I think he's under pressure for being himself really young. He's a new player. And also, he doesn't even have the same skills Donk does. And he's got this whole external pressure of like, why are you even in that team? So when you consider they've got 2 pure rookies, already you'd expect some failures. Then actually, here's where I will blame the coach in a way that, funny enough, he doesn't take credit for this. I actually do think one of the things about their team that's been very impressive to me is if you read all the interviews and you look at the maps they're the best on, they do look like a team that's actually very prep heavy and that they want actually like time off events and they want like weeks to do boot camps and they're clearly working on like set maps that they've prepped for. I still think the only reason FaZe even beat them is because they stupidly themselves decided to call the bluff of FaZe of like, well, you won't let Vertigo through. And it's like, well, the reason why FaZe did that is because why would you let Vertigo go through? You're better than them on all the other maps. But I think Halley tried to be like a pro coach that's been coaching for 10 years with a veteran team like FaZe, and he didn't realize you've just played chicken and lost there, bro. Like, you aren't the team that can go to a map you haven't prepped and don't know what remember in that scenario, they had no idea what FaZe was going to do. FaZe doesn't play Vertigo. So I think that's happened a few times. It actually happened in that Mongol series. I forget if it was Anubis they picked or something, but I remember people criticizing and saying, why have they picked this? Like, and if you ever look, it's because Mongols had like just lost on LAN on that map, like massive to someone else. So I think what they were doing was what veterans do. You go, we're just going to punish pick your weakness and expose you. And the problem is, in this scenario, you're not veterans. You're also beginners. You're also a new team. By the way, even people like Chopper and magixx, they've been around the scene a long time, but they weren't in finals of like Katowice and stuff like that. You know, they were the guys who, if they made the playoffs, they'd have been the ones cheering like a saw or something like, wow, we're getting to go to the arena once. So I think people really forget like the lack of experience in the team. So to me, they do seem like a very, very prep heavy team. So I also think that maybe is part of why certain events they excel and then some of them they just kind of like lose it. And then lastly, I'll just say this. I agree on that one detail, which is you should never have lost to Mongols. That's true. Mongols played out their mind. But the other factor is if you were ever going to get banged out of a tournament last place, it would be something like have to play a G2. Because remember, G2 simultaneously had to get upset by Saw inexplicably. And then suddenly the last place match at Cologne is like one of the top 5 teams against you, like also a top 5 teams. That is also like the recipe to get banged out last place, unfortunately. So I do think that for me, Cologne was like the perfect shitstorm, as it were. I don't think that's going to happen at other events, but I do take like the small details. Like I'm going to look for the next major and see, will they just stick to what they're strong in the veto? Will they try gamble and punish pick people? Will they mix up their picks? If they do that, I think that's sort of like trying to do the advanced level, whereas you're just at the intermediate level now. You've passed the beginner, you're ready, but you're not at the FaZe clan level where you can do stuff like allow a map you don't even play through in the veto. I think some of these things we do take for granted that when you see Donk's crosshair shoot people, we just assume every other part of the game's there and he's got 10 years experience like Rain and he's played every possible opponent like Carragher. They haven't. These guys are still beginners. They're just exceptional beginners.
Henry, that comment that Thorin made, do you think that maybe the general public puts a little bit too much pressure on Spirit? Because we do forget that they are there's a lot of like there's young players, but there's also that, like you said, the magixx and Chopper.
By the way, I think magixx is only something bad like 21 or something. I think even he's pretty young, like because he started when he was like 17, I think, didn't he?
I think they're all pretty young, and like I think Chopper didn't really play much tier 1 LAN for a very long time.
And he wasn't the IGL back in the day. So
the Vegas Squadron days, though, and I feel like he had some impact. The Sharks, they were doing some work back at the E-League majors and stuff like that. They always were a dangerous team. I think he has plenty of experience. I actually think he's a pretty talented in-game leader in terms of the fragging department as well. Like I don't think there's many that hit the shots he can so consistently. He always seems like to be able to be selfless and have impact at the same time. I'm not really sure. Like, it feels like when you do have a generational talent, like you have Donk, you've secured him. Presumably, he's locked into a contract where he'll probably live out the majority of his career through Spirit, similar to what Simple's done. And if he's making signings, like blockbuster signings, like with Shiro, that's a declaration of intent. You're no longer a plucky young team with some up-and-comers. You've signed one of the world's best AWPers, not only from your region, but in terms of World Counter-Strike as well. I think the expectations are adequate. Like, they want to be champions. They've already proven they can do it. And the drop-off and the inconsistencies is inexplicable sometimes. And no one really seems to know why they look so weak, why they kind of fall apart under the pressure. Today was a prime example of that. You open up against MIBR. You win the first map 13-2. They've never taken a map off you in the history of Counter-Strike. Like, since time began, like, this team has never been able to touch Team Spirit in all its iterations. Even looking back to, like, when you had Artfrost and people in the team, like, never took a map off them. And now, when the pressure's on, the heat is there, you've got Donk in prime form. We just set the world record yesterday. You can't make that excuse. He's firing all cylinders today as well. He's looking hot. You win the first map 13-2 and go on to lose the series. I don't know. I couldn't really tell you why that's happening. But the expectations, I think, are adequate. Like, if you want to be the world's best, you want to make these sort of signings and be that organization that's going to be at the tip of everyone's tongue when it comes to the top 5, then yeah, I think you signed up for this. You want to play this team, you want to play with Shiro. You want to house the world's best player right now, arguably. I think it's adequate, and I think they know, and their objective is to win trophies. So I don't think we're being harsh, and I don't think the expectations are unrealistic. If you can win tournaments like Katowice, why can't you convert games against MIBR in the group stages of Pro League?
Why do you think it is that they can't convert, Henry? I mean, when you're looking at them, why do you think they have these massive
$1 million question there.
Yeah, here we go. How can I fix Team Spirit's current situation? I don't know. Like I said, it's inexplicable sometimes. Like, the fact it's such an open goal. You've just won 13-2. Everything's looking great. You move on to your map pick. It was Spirit that picked Nuke today. And that's normally like a home run for them. And I couldn't really tell you. It just felt like they get weird results in the pistols. When the pressure's on, they don't seem to convert pistols ever. And that they always seem to lose both of them, set themselves up at a deficit of 6 rounds to kick things off. The clutches don't seem to come in as consistently. And you're getting the Donk picks, but it just seems like it comes down to the real nitty-gritty, the rounds that really make a difference. They don't seem to get it over the line. I don't think they have as much clutch power as other teams do. Like, Donk is normally your kind of first man in. He's normally finding you that space and finding you those opening kills. Do the rest of the players have the same sort of tenacity and kind of ice in their veins as other veterans in the scene and within the top 5 teams? I'm not so sure. I feel like it's the clutch factor that's a problem, because Donk will find you that space, but he won't normally close rounds for you.
Yes. By the way, I've even got an example of that. If anyone remembers at Bet Boom, when they played the upper bracket match against Mouse, obviously everyone thought that would be the final, but Spirit beat Mouse. In the upper bracket final, the second map was Ancient, and this was the one where Mouse pulled it all the way back with Yimpat winning loads of clutches and almost like came back into the game and made it 14. If you ever watch that map, that is Spirit's like biggest problem right there, because on some of these T rounds on Ancient, I think there was about 3 rounds in a row where Donk just does like a 2K just straight up by himself at the beginning of the round with an 8K. And it's like, bro, these are 5v4s. Like, if we're getting clean 5v4s over and over again and we're losing them, that's not Donk's fault. He's dead at that point in the round. Like, I agree with you, Henry. Someone else has to win those. One of the things I will say, and this is why I do put a lot of the emphasis on it, has to be Donk and Shiro and Mega in this team, is individually, Zontix has won a bunch of clutches. Shiro can win a bunch himself. magixx gives you the odd clutch. But here's the difference between this team and Vitality, or pick another top team that's loaded, Na'Vi or something. If you're in Na'Vi and you see it's a 2vx, but it's like, let's say it's Bit and Alexi. So Alexi's not the greatest clutch, but Bit and Alexi, between the two, you're like, hey, this could work. If you're watching Vitality and it's like Spinks and Mezzy, you go, hey, you know what, they could win this 2vx. If you're watching 2vx and it's Chopper and magixx, you probably wait for the next round. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't, they don't have the same, like, distributed firepower. By the way, that's actually one of the reasons I put a lot of pressure on Mouse to win. They should win with almost anyone alive. Like, all their players are good, but I do think Spirit doesn't have that luxury. Some of the other big names do have, like, more stars and more people who can be relied upon. It kind of has to be the main guys. Like, essentially for me, if you want a football analogy, I do think sometimes Spirit is like the team where they have, like, the best striker and an amazing winger and not much else. You know what I mean? Sometimes the rest of the players are, like, not world class. And so those guys have to be godlike every game. Basically all my favourite Liverpool teams.
So
I wish I could join in with the football analogies.
It's all good.
I can't.
It's all good.
I could talk about Alan Shearer or Beckham, maybe.
Okay, old school.
Back in the day, very revealing your age there.
Stopped following football.
All these kids now with the Skrillex and the Pogs.
Yes. Exactly.
And your Sonny D.
Dude. I will say as well, I feel like Shiro, as much as we raise him, I don't think he's had the best showing in Spirit. I found him to be very inconsistent from map to map. Like, he misses a lot of shots. I don't know, like the ones he does hit when he's on, it looks great. Next map, like the one we saw on Nuke today, he just seems like he just has key misses, like the kind of attributes that would key to like someone like Woxic, like the classic flicky ones and great impressive ones, but then the shots you really need him to hit, the ones that win rounds, they just don't seem to come through in the games they're losing. Obviously, still think Shearer's a top 5 ball player.
Oh, of course,
opinion, but the form he's in right now, I don't know. I feel like that is a problem as well. If you're relying so much on Donk and if Shearer's not there with him, he's missing these impactful shots. I feel like that's a massive issue too. So yeah, I don't know. Like it's definitely a team we expect a lot from, but right now it seems like they definitely need to pull something together. I couldn't tell you what it is, but there's something not quite right with Spirit right now.
By the way, that's even one thing I do think is like, I wouldn't even say it's necessarily a massive deficiency. It's just a weird playing style. The one thing I've never understood is why does Shiro play like he's Jame and he plays like super passive? Because he's one of those people. It actually reminds me, if everyone remembers back in the day on Na'Vi when Flamey was like skilled, but he would have loads of games where he had no impact. I always wanted to tell him, like, bro, has someone like hypnotized you that you're like a bad player? Like, your mechanics are mega. Like, you could dominate the game. So that's one thing I don't get about Shiro. His actual skills, his mechanics are really strong. Like, you would think with how AWPers are, normally the mega ego players, like even people after are worse, like Torshi, they're going for every flick, bro. They're going for every. I think if Shiro had like someone else, like, I don't know, confidence-wise or in terms of how he frames himself mentally, this guy could be even better. He could be up there with the Monacies, but he sort of like subdues himself a bit. And I agree with you. When he disappears in a game, he just gets really quiet and he just doesn't take the peaks, man. He just goes a bit passive, you know.
I think we know he's an emotional player. We've seen him crying and stuff when games are going wrong. Like I know he's deeply invested, and I feel like that's the difference. Like, you do need that ego. Like, the best AWPers I've ever played with and commentated as well, they're the ones that at the start of each round, they've got that killer instinct, that X factor. They're not waiting for their in-game leaders to give them an idea or a suggestion. They're saying, I'm picking here this round. Top teams should be basing their rounds and their ideas around what the AWPer wants to do. It's the most impactful weapon in the game. If you've got an AWPer that's feeding himself and someone like Torji who's like, I'm going to go pick here, I've got this spawn, I can feel like I can make a gap here. Like, that's when you're in the zone. I feel like, I don't know for sure. He doesn't speak much in terms of interviews and stuff like that. I don't think he has that same killer instinct we see from other top AWPers like Modesty, as Duncan said.
Yeah.
So this leads me on to my question about the way that this team plans their calendar, because obviously one of the things that they've done, which is kind of a few people have been confused by, is that they choose to miss certain tournaments. They try and they say that they want to rest. They don't want to do every single tournament. But do you not think for such a rookie team, they should be playing as much as possible? Because obviously the more time on stage, the more comfortable you get.
I don't know for that one because I'm a bit torn. Like, first of all, I will say there's one detail which I haven't looked into enough myself to know on this one, but I do know because I've been getting to know Dexter and people like that, and I've been looking into his visa thing. And it turns out it's not just Dexter, by the way. It's basically a lot of Russian people, unless you were the ones that went to Serbia and got another passport. A lot of them, it's way harder to get visas now, it turns out, because of some of the like conflict-related things and the nature of the sanctions in the world. I've heard that, like, for example, maybe the first Pro League they skipped was because if you ever look, I think they only got the invite 2 weeks before, and they say it takes 8 weeks to get the visa now or something. So it's possible for that one, they might just not have been able to clear. Like, when they declined that, what they might have meant is we just can't attend, basically. But people took that as like, oh, you're choosing not to attend. I will say they're not doing like I Am Rio, for example. So there are certainly some events it looks like they are skipping. And I will say I get why people critique them, because obviously they attend every single one of those bet boom events, which just looks cynical. Like what you're saying there is like, oh yeah, oh, did I skip Pro League where you play all the teams? Oh, I'll just beat the shit out of Eternal Fire now and break all the records. Like, yeah, that sounds like you're trying to be cynical and farm the circuit, doesn't it? So, but here's where I am a bit torn though, Sam. in a way, I agree. Like part of, like pretty sweet, a lot of the questions we're trying to answer here would be answered a lot more if they played every event. If they'd have played Chengdu and Pro League, we'd just have seen more sample size. By the way, we'd have seen them play every top team more as well. We might have a better sense, but at the same time, the reason why I'm not certain is actually the rookie factor, because I also feel like maybe not as much in this circuit, but if you think in the old circuit where you could sometimes do 3 events in a row before you go home, I've seen teams do that where you start that first event really badly and there's no time to go home and get the breather or change anything you're doing. And some of those, like, you can get it where that's like a 3-event skid and every event's just like worse after worse after worse. It's not till you get to the player break and you get home, you get the little reset. So I could see it going both ways. I guess it would depend again what the character of the team is. Maybe that would like fire them up and they'd get the early losses out the way and they'd have already had these things before Cologne. Maybe it actually would have like worn them down further and actually their rep would be even lower. And then the other reason, I think one thing later on maybe we should shade into this is, even though now that rumor existed at Cologne of like, well, if you look at them, maybe they're going to make a roster move and maybe, maybe Zontix knows he's caught or something, like, which was like speculation. I will say, even though they've said in that interview with Chopper on HLTV, like, we have no plans to change the team until after the Shanghai Major, the real issue there is, I actually get the feeling, because I agree with Henry, if buying Shiro for millions proves, hey, we're not just like a feeder team, we're trying to get the best players. In fact, you know what, Cloud9, you thought you were the super, we're making the super team, bring it over here. That implies to me that actually you are willing to test the transfer market. So the other problem I do think exists is no matter how good things are in team spirit, because Cloud9's a little bit sus with their roster right now, and especially VP is like just collapsing and they're like a super team. Almost by virtue of those players, there's going to be a shuffle in the Russian scene at some point. So if that happens, there's a lot of fucking good players out. So they also could be either a victim of that or they could themselves gain. Maybe they can bring in another good player. Who knows?
It's so funny you brought up that. Yeah, I saw that VP thing. I'm trying to look for it now, like sneakily, but there was, it's one of those weird, like, rumor mill tweet things that they've translated something from Telegram. And I think they were saying, like, something like 8 players have been approached by VP in like the last week.
Oh, I can tell you, one of the rumors that I've heard is credible is that VP's one of the teams trying to sign Monacy. If you don't know, by the way, that's not a joke. The whole time, they're all just like, you up, Monacy? Like, everyone Russians just messaging this guy all the time, like trying to get him signed. So, I'm sure they all want him. And obviously, VP themselves in an interview, if you remember, they did that weird interview where they just signed Electronics, so they just set the super team. And then that guy who's like the CEO was like, and by the way, we will be testing the transfer market with millions of dollars. It's like, bro, you've only just made the team. So, but I think that was almost like basically saying, like, Monacy, millions. Did you hear that? Put a zero at millions of dollars. Like, how much do you need? So I get the vibe, like, eventually they're going to change that roster.
He replaces Jame. Is that the
I mean, there's another thing, Henry. If you ever read the interviews, they have the weirdest interviews in VP because you would think their whole thing would be the opposite. Like, it's James' team. Jame won the major, who's the MVP. You'd think when they're coming in, we're going to test electronic. They make it sound from the interviews like they're more shifted to the electronic side, bro. I think Jame himself even did an interview where he said, maybe I won't be the IGL one day or something like that. I think he even implied he might become a coach one day. So I don't know if that's like a symbiotic thing and like he's willing to step back if the team doesn't work and they let him become the coach or something. But that was weird to me because I always thought that was kind of like his team, a bit like in Rock, you thought it was Cadian's team, didn't you? He's always going to be there. It's always going to be his way. So I don't know if that alarms me, if it's good. I'm not sure yet.
It's a bit of a tangent, but like I just feel like in CS2, their playstyle just doesn't doesn't function with MR12 and the new economy system.
Yep.
I feel like saving is fine, but you just don't have the rounds to like justify it anymore. They might just think it's a 3-round difference, but you're getting 3 less gun rounds essentially. If you're saving, you've got to scramble and start taking huge risks towards the end. That's what it feels like. They're always scrambling, and it's always like the last 15 seconds it doesn't seem to land the same way it did in CSGO. I feel like maybe the change of the in-game leader wouldn't be the worst idea. I feel like maybe that's something they bring Electronic in, use his ideas, put him in as like interim in-game leader, I suppose. But yeah, maybe if you could get Monacy with Jame, I think you do that all day long.
Yeah.
I made that comment. I mean, now we're just going off on a tangent, but we can talk about VP because it's fun. I made a comment at IEM Cologne on the desk because obviously as the desk host, sometimes I like to find my
How dare you have an opinion? You're supposed to just watch the game and go, sorry, I don't understand anything here. Tell me what happened, pimp.
I did a full-on Maui thing where I was like, well, if VP loses to Falcons, it's bye-bye, Jame. And I remember the two
analysts like, all right, at least he kept it tempered there. Okay.
Yeah. They both looked at me, they're like, they told me I was insane.
Anyway, welcome for the interview, Jame.
But they were like, that's insane. They're not going to get rid of Jame. And I was like, I'm telling you now.
It's plausible.
I think it's coming. I think that they move Electronic to IGL and they replace Jame. So there is a horrible part of me that hopes it happens just so I could be like, oh yeah, that hot take actually.
I'm just sick of commentating them, to be honest. Like, it's always cold day in hell when I go, oh, you're commentating the VP game. I'm like, for fuck's sake, you got to be joking. Like, everyone dreads it now. It's not just me. Every other commentator.
No.
You see, you got to commentate big versus VP. You know you're in for a rough 3 maps.
Yes. And also, the worst thing now is this, Henry. I always used to say before, it's a bit like those like famous Italian football teams that play super defensive, right? I always say, the problem is you can't complain if they win, though. Like they did. This is what's criminal about VP. They used to play that really annoying style all the way, but then they would win at the end. So you'd go, well, now they do it and they lose. They make you wait all the rounds and they lose 30-11. That's when you're like, what was this about, Jim? What are you doing, Jim?
It's so true, bro. I can't deny that. It's so true.
I had to do I do all the ESL challenges, and they always make the host work the whole day, and those are like brutal 12, 13.
Oh, you were saying those are the ones where you do the 4BO3. This Henry, she's actually like 5 years ago where we were. She does the 4BO3s, and then the last one's the VP one that goes 3 maps. You're like, kill me. Like, that's insane.
It's always VP, and now whenever I do like a blast or an IM and there's like someone on the desk or a caster who's like, oh god, VP, I'm like, I've been here. Like, this is my life now. Like, I've just lived in a constant
you're like someone who's on your 3rd tour of Vietnam. You're just like Tom Berenger in Platoon, like, I've been here my whole life, motherfucker. I love it.
Do not drink all the energy drinks yesterday. Like, you must have known this was coming. Let's turn the focus back to Spirit, though, because do you think that a roster change is needed to take this team a step up? Is that something that they need, Thorin? Do you think that they have to change a part?
I don't think they have to, but I will say, as I said at the beginning, when they win, it is by fine margins, though. It's actually also why that Katowice event just ruined all their narratives. Remember, they lost one map that was close, and they just spanked everyone the whole tournament through. No one can actually do that. Like, you have to realize, guys, even the greatest teams of all time, even Astralis used to win 3 maps and close sometimes, Sometimes it's not your day, you're not in your form. But I will say, I do think, like I say, this team, I think, heavily relies on the 2 stars. So I think they have way less margin for error. Like, essentially, if you just tell me one of Shiro and Donk doesn't turn up at the major, they're not win the major. If you tell me both turn up, there's a chance. If they get the right opponents, if they play the right way. So the only problem I have goes like this, which is, I do also think, in general, like, I think their T-side's pretty good. I'm just scared that if you change a player out, how does it affect, like, the dynamic of the team? You know what I mean? Like, I'll give you the obvious example. Everyone always says, like, in theory, Monacy's better than Shiro, right? But would you replace Shiro instantly with Monacy? It probably changes the whole dynamic of the squad, right? Who knows if there's overlap, if he wants space, if he has agency. So I think it would depend what player. Like, the rumor before, if you remember, was like maybe it's magixx or Zontix and they get, like, Perfecto. Listen, if you can bring Perfecto in, that's a different story. I think that guy is mega. But it would also depend who you're picking up. If you're picking up just some up-and-coming talent, I'd probably just stick with this lineup. At least my logic would be like the interview. You do one more cycle. You do till after the Shanghai major. Then you go, right, we've had a year, we've had 2 majors, we've had the Katowice. I think that's a very good time to go reassess things. Most lineups don't last 2 years anyway. You just say, right, now's the time to do the upgrade if we need to. Or if we already win, maybe we can stick with this lineup. Who knows?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I feel like if you are going to change anyone, it's probably Zontix for reasons Thorin already stated before, like that political aspect. It sounds distracting. It sounds like it's like a thorn in the side of the team. And the fact he's so young, he's playing those anchor positions as well. And those, I would say, are the easier roles to replace. Like, you kind of just slot people in that are willing to do those roles. And if you can find someone who's a little bit more clutch and not as distracted, and Zontix does seem very up and down. I would say you do that, and if Hallie's taking all the blame and he's the one fucking everything up, change the coach as well. I'd say those are the 2 changes you make. And I guess I don't know for sure, but gun to my head, that's the ones I would suggest.
By the way, the thing that's so terrible about the Zontix stories, like I said, I didn't even know that political thing. I just found out as the year went on, where someone told me from behind the scenes. But it's even worse because remember, he was like the ultimate thing, as we say in the cliche in English, is you made a rod for your own back. Because remember at Katowice, when they did win and they didn't choke, he famously did that classic thing where it's like, why does any young player do this in interviews? You go, I know a lot of people think I'm probably going to choke. The thing about me is I'm sort of built different, aren't I, bro? I don't like get pressure in that. Now, the reason that is so mental, it's like, bro, why even say that before you've been out there? You know what it could only, either you're the greatest player of all time, or it's going to come back to bite you once eventually. And obviously it was at the major when it kind of did come back. So I do feel like that doesn't help, because I agree, as a player, he's probably the worst player in the team for just either being really good or completely not turning up. Like, he's had some outrageous stinkers where he did like the James Bond 007 on the scoreboard. So I also think that's not a great sign there, because what's weird is that's almost like, I almost want that arrogance from Shiro, like I said. I don't really want it from you, Zontix. It's not just like a role player, mate. Like, the game was never on your shoulders anyway. If anything, you want to be taking that pressure off yourself and going, look, I'm a young player, but, I'm eager to be on stage. I hope I'll perform. Don't say that. thing about me is,
yeah,
I don't
right.
choke.
You're so right. Yeah,
you're not that cool, bro.
Why even say it? That confidence is earned, I think,
I love it.
and he hasn't got there yet.
I can't imagine any other job where you do that. What? I know I've only played these small student gigs, but when I'm at Glastonbury next week, I'll probably just fucking, you know what? Don't even put the music in my ears. That's probably play it all just acoustic on a fretless bass. I'm like, why don't you even say all that, mate? Like, you don't win anything extra if you don't choke. Like, it's just a normal standard, isn't it? Like,
yeah,
what even is this?
Totally agree. Yeah, those are the changes I would
love
make.
it.
Like, let's go for a coach change or a Zonk change, just for a few.
I think that's fair too. Yeah. Remember the Halley guy? As far as I know, I don't know if this is the first team he's coached, but he wasn't some like famous coach in CS history or something. You know. Remember, we're all praising Na'Vi from like Blade being the god and the mastermind of the game. So I think that's another thing people forget. I think their coaches are rookie too, so they've got a lot of inexperience across the board. Yeah.
Who would you, from a coaching point of view, because this is actually an episode that I want to do at some point. I would like to understand what coaches actually do, because sometimes I really don't know. Like, I can see it sometimes with like a Blade, but then other times I just don't understand what exactly the role
primarily
of the coach is.
Having worked within a team, I suppose I can talk to that. Like, basically, it's their game plan, it's their vision. They're working with the GM, they're working with the in-game leader. They're trying to build what they see as the perfect team. They're the boss of the squad, essentially. You're playing under what they see, how Counter-Strike should be played, their philosophies, and you're trying to encompass that and work with the in-game leader. You need to have a very good relationship with the in-game leader and the coach. They need to be on the same page. You need to have an understanding. If there's any gaps or there's any doubts in the players' minds, like, it can fall apart very quickly. So basically, yeah, they'll sit there every game. They will, when they're online, they will contribute a lot more and try and show you how they're supposed to, how they want you to call, how the round should be going, and they'll be a little bit more hands-on in the online pugs and stuff, practice games. But essentially, yeah, it's just working with the in-game leader and coming up with the whole system. Essentially, it's their system. They are the boss of the squad, and just like any other sport, their decision is final. They'll work with the GM if there's a lineup change or a player's not working out, and they'll give their input. And essentially, yeah, that's the role of the coach. On the server, not so much. It's going to be more of like, come on, lads, like you're pointing out mistakes and just reminding them to communicate more. They don't have as much impact these days. Like back in the day when we first started CSGO, they could talk all the time right until Valve ruled that out. That's when they had a lot more impact. That's when they could just be the in-game leader, the eye in the sky. But bear in mind as well, when you're watching the game as a coach, you're just sat behind essentially one screen. You can see all 5 screens at once. You don't hear the in-game sounds. You don't get the nuance of what's actually going wrong there. You can kind of give an educated guess, but essentially your impact is going to be more of the fact of raising morale, getting people out of a slump, reminding people how important this game is, and that sort of thing. So on the server, like their contribution is quite minimal. I would say it's like just calling the timeouts and reminding people to try certain ideas when things are going wrong. But yeah, like essentially it's all down to the prep. It's all about the practice and creating an environment that's going to allow your team to flourish.
Sometimes, though, do they do that? That's always going to be my question.
I mean, the problem is, it's also like every role in the game, though. It's a bit like if you ask, what does in-game leader do? We can give you, like, you know, the existence / Alexi B / the guy who's like the super bastard. But there are IGLs where they used to just be a player and they call a loose game, and they have stars, like famously all the Swedish teams play this way. Actually, the stars sort of decide themselves in their little route what they're going to do, or if they're going to take this push, or if Flush has got like an angle on someone there. So I also think it depends on your personnel. The problem I do think with the coaching thing is the era when Henry's referencing back in 2016, where the coach could also basically be the IGL and be a voice the whole time. The 2 players that ruined that is Starix and Threat, because Threat was with NIP and Starix was with Arm. They were actually for real being the in-game leader, and they were really good at it, because you can imagine it was like StarCraft. They could see all the machines. Yeah, they were just literally like micro in the push-pull of like, right, you go. They essentially could do what no in-game leader can do, which is they could be watching the PC of the guy who's the entry player while they watch the lurker guy and then see the timing of like, right, attack now. And it did make, by the way, those teams really good. But I think the problem is, even though we all know the rules changed, so now you can only talk in the timeout, I think in a weird way, people almost have the expectation the coach does that. Like when I see people bang on Kassad with the bleed lineup, I'm like, bro, you know, once the game starts, he gets like 2 times to talk to them, and that's like, 30 seconds. You're making it sound like it is StarCraft, and he's microing them all and telling them to do the wrong move.
When they're doing those online games, he does have more input. They play a lot of online CS, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to really referee the fact that they shouldn't talk. So they just allow in online games, you are allowed to talk as much.
Yeah.
But totally agree. Like, it's still like, you don't want to get into that sort of mindset of like, oh, the coach will just kind of handle this all for us.
Yes.
Like, when the lands do come rolling around, like, what are you going to do?
Yeah. Because here's the thing, if you're in LAN in a massive stage, you can't just decide when they mess up the last round. Like, hey, do that strat. Well, unless you Taz, of course. But anyway, certain people have certain privileges and roles. That's okay, Henry. You're not associated with that statement. You're just in the call when I said it. I'll always be doing that. I'll be shooting shots at the legends. It's all good.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
And I will say, this is actually why, though, also Blade is ahead of everyone. Because we all laughed when it was in that Na'Vi team in 2022, when they all came along with those dossiers, right? But that is actually low-key genius, because what it allows you to do, two-part, is one, the player himself between the rounds can just look in the dossier. That's actually very smart. And then secondly, it means if he does the legal version of Taz, which is in a timeout, you say, hey, check on that page, it's all there. It's essentially like having a giant soundboard of strats, and you point to the one you want to do. This is why I say I think it's personnel-based too. Because if I had to guess in like FaZe, for example, Sam, where I think Neo's more of a demo analyst in that team, and he's just coming up with ideas. And carrigan, he's going to call a lot of the game on the fly anyway. I don't think their prep will be like, they wouldn't have a dossier like that. Their prep, I imagine, is probably more like, I imagine Neo does most of the work in the practice server and in the scrims and between scrims and theory stuff. And then carrigan, says, right, I'll take the baton from you, and I sort of control it in the game. So I also think it depends. Like, the point is, if you have a carrigan, maybe you don't need that sort of in-game leader coach dynamic. Whereas if you are less experienced in game leader, maybe you need the Blade or someone like that above you. I think also, to me, I think that's the dynamic people miss, is in-game leader coaches, the synergy I want to see. I want people who are on the same page, or even better, sometimes if they fill in each other's weaknesses. Like this guy, like a classic example, I think, in a lot of old CS teams where we didn't have coaches. I used to say this to my mate MSL all the time. I said, mate, you've got all the tactics. You could probably nail like the analysis, but you're not like a super charismatic guy. Same thing with Stanislaw. You're not the guy where they want to follow you because they believe in you. Like, by the way, I actually like people like Taz, where you have like crazy charisma. So sometimes there's sometimes a mismatch that you can fill in, I think, with coach as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's a very good point. I think that there's a fine line between that you got in-game leader, where you need to be a strategist, and also the team captain. Very few people can fill both those kind of requirements, right? And that's where the coach can come in, and that's why you need someone who's got a good personality, a good vibe to them, good energy, and when the shit's hitting the fan, they're ready to raise everyone up and remind everyone that we've been here before, and it's all going to be good. And some in-game leaders can pull off both of those things. Sometimes they can't. Like, my experience, like having a very good strategist and someone who's not a captain, and they have a weak resolve when it comes to, like, well, we've fucked up a round, where we messed up, someone missed a grenade, or someone I don't know, like got a timing wrong. They didn't understand exactly what strategy you were doing. There's some people that just can't let that go, and it will affect them for the rest of the game or the rest of the half, and it just fucks up everything. So finding that synergy and finding a good coach and in-game leader that complement each other is very difficult to do, but that's what you need to be a world-class team for sure.
Not only on the coach and in-game leader synergy, I mean, I presume if you have a player like Donk and your Spirit, you want to make sure that he is as happy as he can possibly be, and that he is ultimately, I mean, he needs to be happy with the coach, right? You want someone that he gets on with because he's your superstar. You're going to, I'm presuming you're building around him. If I was sort of GMing a team, that's what I wanted to do. So like changing Spirit's coach right now, maybe not something that they would be thinking about if Donk is happy. I mean, I don't know.
I'll give you another reason why you don't do it as well. Here's a very cynical reason, but anyone who ever played at the pro level or knows pros knows why this exists. Another reason you don't fire the coach now, Sam, is because you already blew that last major. So you save the coach as a go and chill free card if you're the players. For if you blow the next major, then what you do is you go, you know what, guys, we need to restructure the sort of like the team. And then that means that a player doesn't have to be sacrificed when you bomb out the group stage. So even though it sounds cynical, that is how a lot of pro teams work. I'm sorry. Like sometimes, by the way, some of those coaches didn't even fuck up. They just, someone had to be offered to the gods. And so
it's a thankless job being a coach. My heart is bleeding them sometimes. Because when the team wins, of course, everyone's going to say, oh, they played so well, don't get this. And when they lose, it's like, oh, who do we blame now? It's got to be the coach. They're getting no results.
Sure.
So yeah, well, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't as a coach. I do feel for them. Like, especially when you're a new project, a new team, everyone's expecting so much, it's not working out. It's normally the coach the first to go before anyone else.
And if you ever win a game, they just go, well, you had Donk, didn't you? So it's really not cool. I get no credit at all, but awesome. Like,
yeah, literally that. Literally.
I love it.
That is going to be like the Spirit legacy, though. Let's be honest. It is always going to be Donk. This kid comes in. It's been, what, like a year. He is, like, I mean, I think Henry said it, like, he's become a verb. Like, this is just insane. Does that trajectory keep going, though? Because that's always my wonder, is how long does he just keep being Donk?
I think he's at the start of his career, right? Like he's still learning. He's not even a man yet. He's still a child. So yeah, like his understanding of the game, you're trying to find that perfect middle ground of utilizing his generational talent and also getting him to the point where he's understanding top level CS like a grandmaster chess player. Like he sort of moves ahead. He understands what his teammates are going to do, their tendencies, how to operate in different environments, whether it's a studio LAN or it's a big stage, and understanding when to reel it in. I think that m0NESY's gone through the same journey right now. You see sometimes that he will overstep the mark, and as many rounds as he wins for G2, he gets a little bit too excited and too stuck in sometimes, and that can be a problem. It might not be the most exciting CS to watch, but he needs to evolve into a more well-rounded player that understands every situation he's going into, and that takes time, and he is still learning. And as good as he is, he can get himself out of a lot of sticky situations just like Simple could. He wouldn't necessarily being the best decision or the most beautiful tactic or understanding of the situation, but his mechanical skill will bail him out more often than not. So you see that with m0NESY, Simple, Donk, these generational talents. You can't replicate, you can't teach people how to play CS like these people because they're just freaks of nature. They might not play the best CS, but that's also what makes them such an X factor on the server, because you're expecting your opponent to take the best fight, the most predictable move. They don't do that. So to answer your question, I feel like, yes, he's got a lot of room to grow, and that's an exciting prospect, and he's definitely going to be the cornerstone of this Team Spirit organization. You've signed arguably the greatest Counter-Strike talent of all time in his rookie year.
Yeah.
Which is unheard of, unprecedented. And I remember when he first came on the scene like a year ago, we were doing a pro league like 2 seasons ago, and I was doing the interviews at the lobby thing, and I was asking everyone like about their settings and stuff. And everyone, even then, when he was just appearing on the scene, even Device was saying like, "Oh no, I'm using the Donk resolution now. I'm using the Donk sensitivity."
That's ridiculous.
They
the
were
guy
so...
won a million majors. Oh, I'm on the Donk shit, yeah.
Yeah, it was so crazy. Everyone said they were trying out whatever res Donk was using. That's what they were going with. This is like a year ago, and he just got on the scene. So yeah, like it's unbelievable. Like I don't think we've ever seen anything like this before. Of course, Simple evolved into the greatest player of CS:GO. He definitely wasn't that at the start. He had a lot of issues, like from a personality point of view and being over aggressive on the server. Couldn't find a team that he really gels with. But yeah, Donk has hit the ground running, and if this is his first professional year, like we've never seen anything like it. So it's difficult to like predict how this is going to go forward because we've never seen anyone this good so early on in their career. But logic suggests that he's going to get better and better and a more well-rounded CS player and can contribute more to the team. He'll feel more relaxed doing like the PR stuff and becoming more of a personality like ZywOo had to as well. You remember how shy ZywOo used to be and not want to appear on camera. That's all part of it. Just feeling more confident, feeling more yourself, and becoming a man as well. Like when he's actually an adult, that's going to be things that will obviously impact him and as a player. And I think it'll just be for the best. He's learning every single tournament he goes to.
Was it the whole, I might have just made this up in my mind. It's a cool story though if I did. That whole Falcons video about Boris changing his mouse settings. Wasn't he changing his settings to Donks just before the event?
Oh, did he say that?
Before the thing?
Fair enough.
I can't remember.
See, Donk's so sick, he's even like sabotaging other teams just by changing his mouse settings.
I think it was the crosshair. I don't think it was
crosshair.
Like a sensitivity or res. I think he went to Donk crosshair, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and I think that's when I was the pro many moons ago, it would put you on edge. Like he's talking about changing the mouse, but like if you hear like, "Oh, I'm going to change my resolution for this map," you don't even want to hear it.
No, that'll tilt you. Exactly. Yeah. Never mind them.
Yeah. So like I get it. Like that whole situation. Like although you want to be on Donk's crosshair, I can understand why that pissed him off.
I just appreciate that Sam's trying to like flex her knowledge of the scene. She's like, wasn't it in Amazing Spider-Man 17 where Doc Ock first appears and Aunt May? I don't know. Was it? Fair enough. I thought I knew a lot about the scene, but okay. Wasn't paying attention.
I had a moment where I was like, I know there was something about changing mask settings, and you might have just taken something Henry said and just made up a story, which now you're going to say, and then next thing it's going to be all over Reddit. So I did clarify there, but I was like, wait, was it Boris's? I know there was a joke about the fact that people were watching him eat, players were watching him eat breakfast to see what he ate for breakfast. But that just started becoming a meme. Like that wasn't the actual case.
Here's the reason why. That sounds mental when you say it, but here's why in a way it isn't mental, Tech Girl. Because you know when people do that, a narrative, what I hate, by the way, which is, you know, when it's like someone like Simple isn't as good in the latter years, they go, is he not as good or did everyone catch up? And it's like, how would they catch up? That's like saying I just got faster at running. Like, no, the other guy got slower, obviously. So in the same way, right? And the reason why, bizarrely, I think people are looking for every other thing about Donk that could be like part of it is because actually, like Henry says, the one thing you can't do is teach what he has. Like, here's the difference. You can teach how device ops and even how some of the, like even maybe how exertion, like attacks and entries at a position. You won't be as skilled at him, but you could teach some of that. The problem with Donk Donk is, like his actual mechanical skill might just be the best ever in CS or any esport ever. So like the shit he is doing, like no one is calling that strat. He's just doing that. No one is telling him. And afterwards, you know, in fact, even the way he sprays, I've never seen anyone spray like that. Like I was saying this on Twitter. It's not even that he does, like normally when we think of sick fraggers, we think of like the instant one bullet headshot. It's when he's already like full auto spraying, all the bullets go to the head. It's like, I've never seen this ever. Like the best spray players ever, normally the whole point is they kill you in the body, like Get Right, Elige, magixx. They just spray the whole clip and it's just hitting the body is all you're going for. This guy headshots you with all the spray. Like, I think everyone's looking, thinking, is this something about like, do you need a fast descent? What mouse pad does you? Everyone's trying to do the like, is there the 1% better I can get? But you can't be Donk. Come on.
No, totally right. I remember commentating him yesterday. He's playing Nuke, and for example, like he comes in T main on Nuke on the T side, and there's a player on the hut, there's a player in the rafters, and he's got to spray control the first 10 bullets to get this guy. Perfect headshot like the 8th bullet. He doesn't stop the spray, transfers fully up to the rafters and hits the first bullet headshot.
Yes.
And it's just like they're firing back as well. They're also like trying to take him down. They're aware of his presence. And it's like I even said at the time, I was like, I don't think I've ever seen anyone control a spray that well. Like you said, we used to have players synonymous with spraying. Like Get Right's a prime example. But it's always like, oh, he's so good at like when there's multiple players on the screen, he'll get you 2 kills because he'll do a big 30 bullet spray and he'll be able to control it, at least hit them. It's never all in the head. It was never always like guaranteed kills. And with this kid, when he's feeding it, we've never seen anyone understand the mechanics and the spray control of the weapons ever before. And this guy as well, he said in, I'm not sure it was an interview, I think it was like a comment he made on a post, like a website or a Telegram group or something like that. They asked him, like, what's your warm-up routine? Like, how do you get in the zone? How do you get ready? He said he doesn't do any deathmatch. He doesn't do any aim bots. He doesn't go on the server and really, he just jumps in like Zywu does. He jumps in and he feels it. And that's when you know you're dealing with someone who is like just a freak of nature, like in the best possible way.
By the way, even if that wasn't true, you should say that anyway, because that's the sort of thing that just makes like every other player shit the pants, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, of course. Sounds gangster, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Doesn't it blow your mind though that we're talking about this kid? Because you said, like Henry, like you said, he's a kid. This is his rookie year. This is his first year. There was no like trajectory. He just started like right at the. I want to say he started at the top, but I feel like he's what we thought was the top. And there's obviously there's a higher ceiling.
Yeah, sure.
Like that kind of blows my mind. Is how often are you going to see something like this? Because even Simple, when he started, like. He took some time. It was a few years quick to get to the top, but Simple took time. Like Donk is just from day one. Is
even the Zywu one, people actually miss. What they forget about Zywu, and there's loads of stories like this, is he actually had played 2 years, but in like tier 3, he used to play for Against All Authority, and they used to even go to French lands. And by the way, there's so many people have stories where it's like he's the one that got away. Like even believe it or not, people like Chet from NRG told me. I actually saw him when he was just in that AAA team, and I was telling him like, bro, just come join us. Like basically before Vitality, like come and play with us. So I've heard loads of people knew he was cracked, but famously he said he had to do school or something.
Bear in mind as well, this is the best possible time as ever, the present day, to become a rookie. Like the resources available these days and the support staff you have, and in terms of like just looking after their golden goose, as it were. Like,
plus, wasn't he in their academy team? Didn't they have that approach as well? I think so, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's
true.
Do
we have that too?
So you brought him up, and you've just got all this like ecosystem working with him to bring him up. And like you look back when Simple started, like 2016, like it was still amateur back then. Like I know we look back at it with rose tinted glasses, but like it was the 5 players, your coach, and then you're getting economy flights. You're just like barely scraping enough money together to even operate as an org. There was no money back then. This is the best possible time to be a rookie, and this is like the first wave of that talent. You're going to see more players like this that just explode out of nowhere and getting kind of nurtured in the correct way.
I also think that's the one area I'll always defend Spirit, which is it isn't only Donk frags everyone and everyone's an idiot just scrambling to win the round. They do clearly put a lot of their effort into building the whole system around Donk. Like, he doesn't just dry entry every site. He has flashes and people running first and space create, and then she rolls behind him for the trade. Like, I will say, that's another area is, if you think about when Zywu came on the scene, I actually think a lot of those French players didn't even know how to use him. They used to be the stars. They weren't used to like the 17-year-old kid who has the whole game. And when Simple came on the scene, just because of his personality, He didn't win people over. He almost was battling his own teammates. The difference is Donk somehow has had like the smoothest entry, and he's gotten everyone on his side already. Everyone's playing for this guy.
I don't think he's going to be plagued by ego in the future.
No, it
he
doesn't
seems
seem like it, right?
Such a relaxed, like nice young man, like very innocent, and obviously needs to kind of evolve, like we said, into an adult. But still, like I don't think he's going to be played by ego. I think he just has a love for the game, and he's been brought up.
Don't you find it weird, Henry, that people get really mad at him for that, like shouting on LAN? Because as far as I've heard, they say everyone tells me aside from that he's really quiet. Like he's not like it's just in the game he's popping off, right?
I guess you're right. Like, I guess he can be unlikable in that sense. People seem, for some reason, get upset. And I was like, dude, you're getting upset at someone who's passionate about winning, who wants to win every single round and knows he has the potential to do that. And he wants to celebrate that. Like, why would anyone be upset with that? I don't understand. But no, I've been to a lot of events, been in the same room with him, spoken to him a couple of times. Super humble, just happy to be there. Kind of minds his own business, not trying to be like the VIP or like the next Ronaldo or something like that. He just wants to turn up and play CS, which is quite rare. It's quite nice to see.
So, final question on this side, and I actually stole this from Flom on the recent episode of Snake and Banter, but I thought it was pretty interesting. So,
come on,
Henry, did you think that Spirit relies too heavily on Donk, though?
I think it's hard not to when you've got a dude that's putting up world record breaking numbers time and time again, and it's when the only kind of stats we have to go over is when he posts his first ever negative event, they crash out the tournament without winning a single map. I feel like yes and no. I don't think they solely rely on, like, oh, hopefully Donk gets 40 kills, but also when the team drops off so dramatically when he doesn't turn up, that's obviously an issue as well. You're hoping Shiro can pick up the pieces, but like we said, he's going from inconsistency issues right now. To answer your question, I don't know. I would say as a surface level answer, yes. It feels like if he's not on the server, he's not turning up, the team seems to fall apart. And that's not going to be, like I said, a legacy team that's going to be dominating for years and years to come. I feel like there's some sort of evolution required with the squad. So, yes, short answer.
Thorin, do you think they have to fix that if they want to be the best team in the world, though?
I mean, this is where having the luxury of what might be the greatest player to ever play any esports game ever sort of kicks in. Because in theory, in any other team, the answer is obviously yes. Like, you should never rely on someone that much. But yeah, you do. You actually have the real bona fide Donk. You know, it's actually gold, that medal. It's not for chocolate inside. And so, by the way, no one else has that player, so you absolutely can lean on him a lot more. And then I'd also say, secondly, this just shows you how strange CS is for how form changes how you look at teams. One of the reasons, actually, because I know people like Vu, I actually think it's a very valid point. I was saying myself for most of the year, I thought Monacy was the best player of the year. But then he made the point of like, yeah, but what actually does Donk not do? And I was like, yeah, shit. Because the difference is I can criticize certain things about Zebu or he's actually when I look at it, it's like actually Donk isn't doing anything wrong. Like actually maybe I have to like rethink like, what are my criteria. But I'll tell you one of the reasons actually, if I was to answer as to why I did pick Monsi before, because when they had the Huxley lineup and Nico wasn't as good and Hunter was way worse, they actually did often mega rely on him. He had to be like the one man carry of that game a lot, and he didn't have the equivalent of a Shiro at the time for me. Whereas now I think that dynamic's flipped a bit. Like actually everyone looks at G2 now, if anything, like they have insane firepower and everyone's fragging everyone off the surface. So I do think they probably do right now rely on him. Out of any star player in the game, he probably has to have the highest level of performance to win you the match. So I think in a sense, yes, but he also is Donk. So it's not fake, you know.
You know, it's quite spicy. Their next game in Pro League is going to be against Mongols in the lower bracket.
The revenge match.
Yeah, so they just lost to MIBR, the team that plagued them at Cologne. That's going to be the next game, and I'm assuming I'm commentating it. So that's kind of interesting. I think that's going to be a good litmus test to see how they can handle the pressure and not bottle it again. Mongols just absolutely dominated Koi today.
This is where if you're Mongols, by the way, since those guys do like to meme and play into like our sense of humor in the West, I'll tell you right now, the banter, all you need to do is if you start winning the game, have one of your players go, who is that noob Donk? That would, if you do that, that will be top of Reddit, number one thread.
Yeah.
KO. That'd be amazing. Do that, please.
Yeah, that's
Get
gonna
the
be
memes going.
That would be sick. That is going to be a wicked game. By the time you watch this, it would have happened already. So hopefully it was worth the watch. And that Henry did a good job on the commentary desk as well.
Let's hope so.
Don't jinx him or anything now, I know.
Let's hope so.
It's going to be in his head now.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Henry. I know that you don't normally do these, so we do appreciate it. And we will see you for another episode very soon.